The 2021 UFA class has the potential to be pretty interesting, and I say it has the potential because obviously things can change, things are going to change. There are going to be some players that re-up with their teams before they hit free agency. I talked a little bit about what I think is going to happen with the top players set to become UFAs this offseason in one of the recent episodes of Ask Me Anything. I think it was like a month or so ago, but I never really made a dedicated video looking ahead to free agency, so that's what I'm going to do today. However, I'm not necessarily going to be talking about the top guys and what I think could happen with them. In this video, I want to focus specifically on some upcoming UFAs who aren't necessarily the biggest name players and probably won't command a ridiculous amount of money that I think could turn out to be really good value signings. There are only 6 players on this list, so if there are any upcoming UFAs that we do not talk about in this video that you guys think could potentially be had for steals in free agency, then be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. And if you guys want your favorite team to have the most luck possible at tonight's NHL draft lottery, then be sure to leave this video a like. It'll help, I swear.
Do you want me to lie to you?
Starting off the video with kind of a controversial pick. I'm not sure how a lot of you guys are going to feel about this, but I have Freddie Andersen, goaltender of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, we all know the deal with Andersen. He lost his starting gig this season to Jack Campbell. Injury played a role in that, but even when Freddie Andersen was playing, he wasn't playing well. Jack Campbell was outplaying him, and it wasn't even really that close. Now, in Andersen's defense, when he was playing, I still don't think he was near 100%, and I think that played a big part in him underperforming. So with Andersen heading into unrestricted free agency after having a year like he just did, I'm honestly not 100% certain what to expect. I feel like a lot of teams are probably going to be pretty reluctant to throw a lot of money at Andersen, or even a lot of term for that matter, so I think there's a good chance we could see a team swoop in and pick Frederik Andersen up for cheap on a shorter term 2-3 year contract maybe, and if that happens, I think there's some potential there. Well, yes, Frederik Andersen had a really bad year, and even last season he wasn't lights out, but let's not forget his first 3 seasons with the Maple Leafs, he was fantastic. He was relied on a ton, played a ridiculous amount of games, and consistently put up a 915 plus save percentage. And take into account the Leafs defense in front of him in those first 3 seasons in Toronto was not very good at all. The most important thing for Freddie Andersen heading into next season, in my opinion, is just for him to get 100% healthy, because like I said earlier in the video, even when he was playing, I still don't think he was 100% this year. So if he can come back next season, like I said, fully healthy, a fresh start with a new team, a new opportunity, you never know what could happen. I'm not expecting Freddie to win a Vezina or anything close to it, but if he can even get back to being like 80 or 85% of the player he was from 2016 to 2019, that 3-year stretch, I think there's a lot of value there. The next player we have to talk about is Stanley Cup champion Blake Coleman of the Tampa Bay Lightning. There is absolutely no shot the Tampa Bay Lightning can afford to bring back Coleman this offseason, right? Unless he signs like some crazy cheap league minimum type deal with them and gives them just a crazy discount. Now, that being said, when it comes to Tampa Bay and the salary cap, you can't really put anything past them. They're pretty good at maneuvering around it and kind of manipulating the cap. I mean, what, they're 15 mil over it right now in the playoffs? Anyways, I think there's a really high chance we see Coleman hit the open market this offseason, and this is a guy that all 31, or I guess 32 now, GMs would love to have on their team. He is the definition of a Swiss Army knife player. He can play on lines 1 through 4, he's great on the penalty kill, he's one of the best forecheckers in the league, just an amazing role player. And on top of all that, Blake Coleman does have some pretty good finishing ability. This is a guy who had 2 20-goal seasons for the Devils in 2018-19 and 2019-20, and he had 14 goals this season in just 55 games, playing mostly on the Lightning's third line. There is a reason the Lightning gave up a first-round pick to bring Coleman in at last year's deadline. He is a very valuable player. Now, that being said, Coleman does get overshadowed because he plays on the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are completely stacked. When a lot of people talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, a lot of the credit is given to the top guys, which makes sense. Steven Stamkos, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, but part of the reason Tampa Bay is so good and are so stacked is because they have a lot of great depth behind those guys, with guys like Blake Coleman. If a team can sign Blake Coleman this offseason to a contract with a cap hit of, let's say, somewhere between $3.5 million or lower, which I think there's a good possibility that happens, you know, flat cap and everything, not a lot of teams have a ton of money. In my opinion, when you consider everything Blake Coleman brings to the table, that's an absolute bargain. Moving along now, the next player we have to talk about is defenseman Ryan Murray, who played this past season with the New Jersey Devils. Now, Ryan Murray's current cap hit, or I guess the cap hit he was on this season, $4.6 million. that's too much for what Ryan Murray brings. Now, the reason that I have him in this video is because he's not going to make anywhere near that in unrestricted free agency. If I had to guess, in all likelihood, he'll probably sign a deal with a cap hit of $2 million or less. I think it could be around like the $1.5 million mark or something like that. Now, Ryan Murray on that type of contract, short term, cheap, I think there's good value there. When it comes to Ryan Murray, yeah, he obviously never lived up to being a second overall pick back in the 2012 draft, but he definitely isn't some scrub, and I feel like a lot of people view him that way. He's definitely not a defenseman who's going to provide you with a whole lot of offense, but Ryan Murray is a guy who's put up some pretty impressive defensive results the past couple of seasons, especially if he's played in the right role, which I definitely think he was this year for the Devils, and is on a cheaper contract. That's the most important thing here. I think he'd be a great addition to most teams, a guy who can play in your bottom pair, play maybe 17.5 to 18 minutes a night, just give you good, steady defensive results, and maybe chip in 20, maybe 25 points a season. I think Ryan Murray is capable of that. Continuing on now, the next player we have to talk about is Jaden Schwartz of the St. Louis Blues, who, like Freddie Andersen, who we talked about at the start of the video, didn't really have the greatest year compared to his standards, I guess. Had just 8 goals and 21 points in 40 games, dealt with some injuries, and was pointless through the St. Louis Blues 4 playoff games against the Avs. Now, we all know Jaden Schwartz is better than that. This is a guy who, for the majority of his career, has been hovering around 20 goals and 50 points a season. He's a very good offensive top 6 winger. He just didn't really pick the greatest year to have a down year, it being in a contract year, obviously. His cap hit this past season was $5.35 million, which I think is fair for the type of player Jaden Schwartz is. However, considering the year that he just had, the flat cap, and even just comparing it to signings that we saw last offseason, I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him to get that type of money again. If a team can sign Jaden Schwartz this offseason, whether that team be St. Louis or a team signs him off of the open market to a contract similar to the contract that Tyler Toffoli signed with Montreal last offseason, in that 4-year range, around $4.25 million, I think that would be an absolute steal, and I think there is a high possibility that we see Schwartz sign that type of contract. Next up, we have the second and final goaltender we're going to talk about in this video, Antti Raanta of the Arizona Coyotes. Now, this is another case, similar to Jaden Schwartz and similar to Freddie Andersen, of a guy not really having the greatest year in a contract year, just pretty bad timing. He only played 12 games this season for Arizona, was injured for the majority of the year, and in those 12 games, he put up just a .905 save percentage. Again, similar to what I just said when talking about Jaden Schwartz, we know Antti Raanta is better than that. This is a guy who had a .921 save percentage in 33 games with the Coyotes last season. In 2017-18, he was amazing and put up a .930 in 47 games, and overall in his career, he has a record well above 500 and has a career .919 save percentage. This is a real solid goaltender, and I think should be a prime target for any team out there that already has a solid goalie on the roster that is looking for kind of like a 1B option. Maybe even a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Raanta and Campbell would be a pretty good tandem next season, or a team like the Edmonton Oilers. There's been a lot of talk and rumors about a potential Mikko Koskinen buyout. Ken Holland came out and said he wants to bring back Mike Smith, so maybe they look at a guy like Antti Raanta to come in and share the net with Mike Smith, because even though Smith was fantastic, put up really good numbers this year, at his age you don't want to overwork him. So those are just a couple of ideas off the top of my head, but nonetheless, I think if any team out there can get this guy for, let's say, maybe around $3 million or even under, I think that would be a steal. And now for the sixth and final player we're going to talk about in today's video, Thomas Tatar of the Montreal Canadiens. It's no secret that the Habs haven't really been all that happy with Thomas Tatar lately. He wasn't great to close out the season, and if I'm not mistaken, he was actually a healthy scratch in Game 7 against the Leafs. This is a player who's too good to be getting healthy scratched. I think he's really in the doghouse of Montreal, so with that being said, I think there's a real strong possibility that he is on the open market this offseason and doesn't re-sign with the Habs. Now, when you look at Thomas Tatar's production from the season and you take into account the healthy scratches and everything, I think a lot of general managers could look at that as an opportunity to lowball Thomas Tatar in free agency, and if that happens, well, then maybe you never know. Thomas Tatar waits a little bit, goes a week, 2 weeks into free agency, and then boom, he finds himself in the situation Mike Hoffman found himself in last offseason and ends up having to sign a contract like Hoffman did. And if that happens, man, I think whatever team signs him to that contract is getting a bargain. Michigan, an absolute steal. Tatar is a great player, and I'm not just saying that because he's a former Red Wing. Just look at last season, he put up a career-high 61 points in just 68 games, and on top of putting up really good offensive numbers, Tatar is always a guy who has had pretty good underlying numbers. He's really responsible defensively too. Any team out there looking for help on the wing in the top 6 should be trying to get this guy, and I just have a feeling that he's going to be undervalued because of how things have been going in Montreal lately. So that is going to do it for today's video. Obviously a lot of this was just pure speculation, but I still thought it would be a pretty fun idea. So like I said at the start, if there are any upcoming UFAs that we did not talk about in today's video that you think could potentially be had for steals in the offseason, be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. And also, like I said, if you want your team to win the draft lottery, like the video, it helps. And lastly, and most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, maybe you're interested in seeing my video later tonight where I probably rage at the results of the draft lottery, then be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all later.